Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we're going to be talking about a big momentous win for the conservative cause with the Big D is back. We'll talk about that. We're also going to be talking about how the left loves to be ambulance chasers and uses tragedy for their own gain by standing on the graves of those who are dead. Also, the left just can't let well enough be alone, and they want to basically hijack everything, including sports. And they've already done that with two major sports leagues. And then going on from there, we're also going to talk about how the left has recent lack of losses in the midterms are going to lead them to do even more damage to the American populace. And hopefully we're going to be able to mitigate some of those errors. We're going to talk about those things and so much more today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
Okay. For future reference, I'm going to make that sound lower. Because the intro, I'm sure for everybody who was listening, that was probably deafening. I'm sorry.
So, we got a new video sponsor or video player or video kind of machine.
I have a new recording software.
He does.
And I'm trying it out because OPS was causing issues, as everyone could tell.
Steven is breaking up with OBS.
Not, well, OBS, if you fix your crap, I'll come back. But
OBS was kind of like not playing nice.
No, they weren't. They
really weren't. They got to earn our love.
Yep. And this other recording software, if it works today, then I might buy a yearly membership, and we'll use this as our program going forward.
Also, everyone send some love to Steven. In the time machine in the past, because you're going to see this afterwards. But send your love to Stephen, who is suffering from a terrible eye condition. He's like Paul, the suffering servant of God, who is suffering with his eyes. You wish you could rip your own eyes out and give it to him. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yep.
Stephen has bum eyes.
Also, when you watch this video, if you're watching it tomorrow, which is November 23rd, that is my birthday.
Yay!
So you all celebrate me having my 31st birthday. I am now
Please send him a beautiful, all sorts of beautiful birthday videos and birthday e-cards. And
my birthday present was that lure video, just like heavily. Yeah. For those who don't, okay, yeah, Danny, go for it.
Okay, you know what? I saw it for the first time tonight when Steven showed it to me. Lower is the company that created the procedure, and they decided to create a promotional video about the reactions to the procedure. And I don't know if you can maybe link it in the description of the video today, Steven. So it'll be in the description. But what shocked me was that not only did they include us in part of their promotional video, like advertising the procedure, but they included us so prominently to the point where we were like the most prominent voices on that thing. And I was like, dang, that was kind of big deal.
Yep.
Because they had some very big names on there, including Eric Metaxas, who is a big name in conservative circles. If you don't know who he is, you're not conservative. So I was like, wow, that's impressive. Yep. We were pretty happy. And Steven had this big gravitas moment where you cannot watch that, but in abject horror. I was like, that was good.
Yeah, when my friend sent me the link, and I was like, oh, cool. They have a video of other people reacting to it. I'm like, oh, cool. A bunch of people who don't have shows. And then I'm listening to it, and 5 seconds in, I just hear my voice, and it says, there is nothing you can do but watch in abject horror. And I'm like, that's me. That's totally me. Is that my voice?
Yusmod,
that's exactly how I reacted. I'm like, is that my
voice?
Yep.
It's so good.
And I was like, oh, Hokey Dinah, they're not just they're not just having the audio, they're just having the screenshot of the show, which shows prominently the Shrewd Dudes podcast. I'm like, ooh, yeah.
That is some quality,
quality promo for free.
Pretty happy about that.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
kind of,
okay, like little thing. So I changed the date. This coming Sunday, we're gonna be downtown, and we're gonna be hopefully watching on my projector. City of Calgary is really weird with like trying to navigate whether I need a permit for that because I'm not setting anything up, or like because I'm not setting up a tent.
It doesn't fall under that jurisdiction?
It doesn't fall under like needing crazy permits.
I was thinking that because when I went with Fairview Baptist and they did like just street preaching, all they did was set up a table and they had like the Pastor Alex with the big speaker.
Yeah.
And it's like it didn't look like they needed a permit. They just kind of spoke out there generally. So I was like, well, it seems like something that wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, like I was looking through it, I'm like, it's like, oh, you need a permit if this, and like you need this permit if this, and this permit if this, and I'm like, none of those qualify for us because we're literally just hosting something on, like, off to the side on the sidewalk,
and we're not even like, we're not selling anything.
Yep,
we're not
providing food.
Promoting. We're not providing food, like that's what Street Church does, and they need a permit to provide food.
Yep.
We're not. What do you call it? We're not even hosting a very large gathering, like the kind of gatherings where you would have like huge groups or something like that. So I'm like, I'm not. Yeah. Not surprised by that.
Like there's literally just so far, like I've been given some contact information. I'm gonna call some people over the next couple days.
Yeah.
Because I've been given some contact information for people from Laura and the guy who made, like, the guy who runs Lure. And so he's like, yeah, like, these are some people that I know in Canada and Calgary. And I'm like, oh, cool. So hopefully they can help out and show up and be out there with us. Okay. And I should be getting the materials Friday?
I guess we'll see.
Yep. So I'm hoping Canada Post delivers because it's Canada Post. But we cannot discuss all of these things forever. So let us move on and talk about some other stuff which is going on. So let's do that. Let's watch a quick video.
So, before
Danny can intro it.
I'm sorry, you can't just launch into a video without setting it up. I mean, like
okay,
that's
set it up,
like,
Danny.
That's kind of the thing. That's kind of the thing. So, obviously, if you've been following it all, like the Twitter controversy and story, Elon Musk has he's taken over. He's now owns Twitter, and the big question mark has always been, like, okay, when is he going to reinstate the big names in Twitter? Last week we were lamenting, like, okay, he got Babylon B back, but that was not a big deal, and he got Jordan Peterson. Okay, I mean, like we were kind of like ooh and ah. Like Stephen was definitely like questioning, like like, well, who cares about them? We need to like get the big name, the big name on top.
I was just like, this is good, but
yeah,
this is
you
not
wouldn't
what
be
everybody
impressed.
was campaigning for.
You wouldn't be impressed until you got the big fish.
Yep.
And thankfully, we got it. We got that big fish.
We did.
And here's where he goes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So.
Yeah. It's courtesy of Paul Joseph Watson, by the way.
Yep.
Put the maid back on.
Thank you, Elon. Very cool.
Right now, a historic moment. Donald Trump wins an astounding upset victory. Tell everybody I'm back in the game.
And the sheer deluge of coke.
Now, obviously, that's totally a parody, kind of like compilation. But because like Trump has actually said that he's not gonna participate on Twitter because he's fully invested in what's it called,
True Social.
True Social.
Yeah.
Well, when I think of it as Trump Social, silly me. But the importance is he made Elon follow through on what he said he was going to follow through on. And this is a big deal. So at the very least, this shows that while we don't know fully what the future of Twitter will be, at least Twitter is no longer going to be used as the platform to censor free speech, at least for now. And that's good news. That means that one major player has been basically taken out of the fight in the tech censorship, which is a big deal.
It is a big deal. So that's good.
I'm really happy about that.
Yep. So now, Elon Musk agrees with Dinesh D'Souza. This is from Blaze Media, that Twitter censorship has been a one-way operation against conservatives.
I gotta agree with that.
Oh yeah, big time. So business magnate Elon Musk concurred with conservative filmmaker and author Dinesh D'Souza's assertion that censorship on Twitter has been a one-way street that targets conservatives but not leftists. We don't hear much about Democrats and leftists being let back on Twitter. Why? Because they were never kicked off in the first place. Their lies and misinformation simply escaped all scrutiny. Censorship has been deployed as a one-way operation against conservatives.
Yeah.
Correct. Musk
this has never been in question. I mean, how many times, Stephen, over the last couple of years, have we seen Project Veritas do exposés on Twitter employees who basically admit, like, oh yeah, shadow banning happens, and oh yeah, we target conservatives and all. This was like an open secret where nobody was saying it out loud in public, but it was well known.
But everybody knew.
Like Tim Pool talked about this all the time. He actually he's the one credited with really putting like Twitter, like, their feet in the fire.
Yeah,
during
when he had that conversation with Vijaya Gotti and Jack Dorsey on Joe Rogan.
That was the first time that Twitter was really put on like the hot seat.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Dang, son, you were torched in that interview."
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reason why I was so happy when Vijaya Gotti was fired.
Yeah.
When she was fired on, like, I think almost day one, I was like, yes, cleaning house. Like, this is what I hope would happen if hypothetically Trump comes into the White House. He just goes in and be like, Fauci, you're fired. And like, what's the guy's name for AHS? Homeland, DHS? DeSortis or?
Mayorkas.
Mayorkas, you're fired. Like, he just goes in and cleans house and totally cleans up shop. That would be amazing if that happened. So, yeah, the fact that like Elon Musk is so openly agreeing with credible conservatives is pretty amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, like Dinesh D'Souza, the left hates him. The lunatic left hates him.
Yeah.
But people who are conservatives and true conservatives, they appreciate the Salsa and they appreciate what he does and the contributions that he makes to the conversation, because he's an honest intellectual, kind of like Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
And that's great. That's great. I'm glad that Elon Musk is doing that. So that's been great news for the conservative cause in the last weekend. Yeah.
And of course, where did this?
You deleted that story?
There it is.
No, you skipped it.
Yep. So, and also from TPU USA, where
it's not Toilet Paper USA,
Twitter,
it's Turning Point USA.
Turning Point USA. And I wish their big ad banner would go away. So the Twitterverse is starting to unravel. This past week, many Twitter accounts that have been banned from the platform for arbitrary reasons have been restored, and it's driving people crazy. Prior to Elon Musk's takeover of the company, there were numerous conservative voices who were shut down, yada yada. The most notable account, of course, has been Trump, and other accounts such as Project Veritas, and Jordan Peterson, and the Babylon Bee.
Yep.
And TPUSA contributor Savannah Hernandez, who is also a partner with Slightly Offensive.
Yep. Project Veritas apparently has also been reinstated.
Yep.
That's been pretty cool.
Put up a big thank you. Thank you to Elon Musk for reinstating the Project Veritas Twitter account.
And they were a big player in Twitter, because, like, let's face it, Project Veritas is the go-to. Like, you know how
real investigative undercover journalism.
Well, Julian Assange is the one who created
WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks. Okay, he created WikiLeaks, right? Which is basically a way for whistleblowers to be able to get their whistleblowing out in
anonymously,
somewhat safe way, right?
Yeah.
Well, up until recently, like Project Veritas was pretty much the only place where people were urged, if you have some kind of
whistleblower, we're going to investigate it.
That's what was happening with the vaccines. Remember,
Yep.
we covered this like in the last couple of years, where we saw stories and we covered stories, you and I, where prominent people from like vaccine companies,
Yep.
like my favorite story was that one expose where this employee at a vaccine company at Pfizer factory they were doing the trials, and she saw that they were completely egregiously breaking all sorts of protocol and cheating the system and totally trying to cover up all sorts of all sorts of malfeasance that they were doing, obviously in pursuit of the almighty approval.
Yep.
And she basically said, like, who do I talk to? Do I talk to a congressperson? No. They told her, like, you should probably call Project Veritas.
Yep.
And I was like, that is pretty much proof positive that Project Veritas is an absolute good.
Yep.
And of course, this is why they were targeted, because the left hates whistleblowers because their whole goal is power.
Their whole shtick is power.
So this is why I'm glad that like Twitter is one source of good news if you're a conservative in this country or in like North America, really, because I mean, as much as like Twitter's an American company, it really, like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all these companies, they still have a big influence in Canada as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're hit by the same fact checks and
100%.
things like that as there. So yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, good news all around, right, Stephen?
Indeed. Until you get to Colorado.
Then it goes downhill. So what happened in Colorado?
So, Club Q Colorado shooting attack was ended by dad and drag performer. So a father and a drag performer managed to subdue a gunman who opened fire at an LGBTQ nightclub in the U.S. state of Colorado. It has emerged the attacker killed 5 people and left 17 others injured at Club Q in Colorado Springs. Officials named the heroes who halted the attack as Richard Fierro and Thomas James without detailing their actions. Mr. Fierro provided his account of events, saying he tackled the suspect, took the weapon, and hit him with it. It's not clear if Mr. James is the drag performer. Mr. Fierro says then stepped in to help. At a Monday afternoon press conference, police identified the victims, and that's, of course, horrific. The suspect is 22-year-old Anderson Lee Eldridge, is in police custody. But after all of this, there was some disputed information that was coming out. Everybody was trying to rush what the motive of the suspect was. Everybody was trying to figure out what his background was, what might have led him to this attack.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what we can see right now, it's just problematic upbringing and mental illness. And this is a contributing factor.
Which is funny because it seems to be a very common thread among most of the high-profile, like, you know, shooters that we see in a lot of these cases.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere from like the Uvalde shooter had like serious mental illness. The shooter in Florida, in Parkland, he had mental health. He had father issues, broken home issues, mental health issues. A lot of these just are all very similar. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But they basically they can't stand. The left is basically, they love standing on the graves of the dead. Yep. It's like, you know, it's what Ben Shapiro said about Piers Morgan, but it applies to pretty much everyone. Oh, yeah. They can't even wait until the bodies have been like you know,
in
like
the ground. Yes,
they're already standing on top of the corpses and, like, you know, shouting, like, you know, like, we should do something for them.
Support our narrative, or else you are supporting this violence. And that's exactly what they went with. Like, we're going to quickly talk about this dad. So Aaron Franklin Brink, 51, began entering into a mixed martial arts cage in late 1998. Over the next 10 years, he had 21 victories, yada yada. He's also said to have divorced Aldridge's mom when their son was a baby, then took up porn acting at age 27 under the name Dick Delaware. Lovely.
Oh, that's the most clever you could come up with. Wow.
Yep. So that's just lovely.
So this kid comes from a very dysfunctional home, basically.
Yep. No kidding. And he had previous incidents in which, I believe it was in 2021, He had an incident where he threatened to blow up his mother with a homemade bomb.
Well,
And he was charged with kidnapping. But then the charges were dropped and the files were nearly sealed. And it's like, what? How did this guy get a gun? Clearly it wasn't legal. So how did he get it?
well, the thing I always find amazing is that the left always the solutions that the left offers are always they never solve the problem, but they always increase their power. That's the big switcheroo that they give, right? They give you fast and easy solutions that sound good, but in reality are only going to cause more harm than good. And this is like a good example. Like, if you talk about like, okay, we need to have laws that are better at keeping guns out of the hands of bad guys. I'm like, well, why didn't the laws stop that here? I mean, this guy sounds like a very reasonable, example of a person that should not be able to own a gun. How come the gun laws didn't actually stop that?
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
yeah, it's the kind of thing where what you need to do, you don't need more gun laws. You need like better gun laws.
Yep.
I think that would be a good way to put it. Be like if this guy had a criminal record or some seriously troubled past, maybe we need to kind of look into like, are our gun laws actually properly screening for these kind of things?
Mm-hmm.
And do we need to change them in order to make that better? But like, no. The problem here is that the problem here is this kind of man and the kind of society that creates him, right? So if you're a reasonable person, if you were a normal, run-of-the-mill, work 9 to 5, hardworking person, you're presented with a story about, and let's just be honest about it. This is a gay nightclub in Colorado, and some crazy person ran in there and shot up a whole bunch of people. Well, if you were told that, what would you think? You'd be like, okay, the problem is that crazy, stupid gunman, right? That's the issue. Like, who is this person? And why are they going in there and shooting and all that? And how can we avoid it? But unfortunately, as a lot of people have pointed out, that is not what the lunatic leftists have done. What they do is they always take a tragedy and turn it into an opportunity. And this is why it's really, really despicable, because they're distorting the true tragedy and twisting it into a distorted, call to act against your opponents. And this is where the whole story really, really goes off the rails.
Yep. Okay,
Right.
So from the Mary Sue, which is a source we've never used before for a very good reason. The extreme right is fully victim-blaming the Club Q murder victims.
Mm-hmm.
Over the weekend, our Brittany Nupper wrote about the horrific mass shooting at Club Q, pointing out that this was a natural end result of the far-right's campaign against queer and trans people.
Sure.
This is what they want, she wrote. Violence is what they
Mm-hmm.
want. They want to control us and force us back into closets. Back into the conversion camps. They want their base agitated and us afraid. Which the right-wing media and far-right personalities have essentially replied, yes. The reaction from the extreme right, which encompasses everything from Fox News to certain Republican politicians who profess online white supremacists, to professional online white supremacists, in the wake of soothing the left 5 dead, has been monstrous. They haven't just deflecting, they've been crafting narratives to fully blame the club and the victims for the fatal violence in what was supposed to be a safe, loving, joyous space. The absolutely abhorrent YouTuber Tim Pool has accused the club of hosting a grooming event, which is true.
They were.
Presumably because they recently advertised an upcoming drag brunch. As a reminder, drag, like the very existence of LGBTQ people, is not inherently sexual. Yes, it is.
Says you.
Yep.
My
It's only
gosh.
right-wing weirdos like Pool who think that. Tim Pool is
No,
not a
it's
right-winger.
no. This is what they do. This is a good example of a left-wing publication where it's gaslighting. It's gaslighting. Gaslight. By the way, you're naked. Yes, I am. It's illegal to be naked. Oh, I'm not actually naked. you just think I'm naked. I'm like, no, you're actually not wearing anything. Well, it doesn't count as being naked. It's like they want you not to believe what is right in front of your eyes. This is how like this is why it's so difficult to have any actual respect for the people who write these things, because they're so blatant in their lies. It's pretty bad.
Oh yeah. Well, and of course, like all Tim Pool says, we shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. Club Q at a grooming event. How do we prevent the violence and stop the grooming? Which is a totally valid claim, a totally valid statement. Like, this event should not be happening. And, of course, the place shouldn't get shut up. Now, I understand some of the anger against a place like this, because we try and protect the children. We try and make sure that these individuals do not have access to the next upcoming generations. We're like, hey, the law should step in. These people should not be allowed to access children. These people are pedophiles. That's what they are. I'm not advocating to shoot them. I'm not advocating to harm them in any way, but the law should be dealing with them. And if the law will not act on these weirdos, if they will not act on these freaks, then some people will see it as their only outlet to resort to violence. We're not encouraging that, but it is a natural outcome when people see justice not being served.
Well, and I think that there's like two major fallacies going on here. One is that it is a non sequitur fallacy. For example, we can say we don't think drag shows for children should be allowed. That does not, like, us saying that drag shows should not be allowed does not automatically lead to mass shootings in clubs.
Yep.
One, there's no connection between the two. And if they're going to make a connection like this, they have to prove the connection.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're assuming that one led to the other without any actual evidence that one did that. Secondly, the second connection is a false equivalency fallacy, which are saying that, by the way, conservatives disagree with us on drag shows, but they also want violence, and they also take glee in violence. I'm like, no,
there's not
just because they disagree with you doesn't mean they want violence. See, this is what happens when you're in the lunatic left cult, which what you believe. And by the way, people who are in this cult are in an echo chamber. People are feeding them these things over and over and over, like by publications like this, by university groupthink, where you're surrounded by a million people who all believe and think and agree with everything. They just like nod their heads in agreement. Oh, yes. So you've never been told anything differently. What people believe is that conservatives, or the people who oppose them, they hate you, that they're afraid of you, and that they can't formulate a coherent sentence, and that everything that they say is violence. Because remember, what is one of the best ways to instill fear in a cult membership? You have to convince them that what the people are saying against you is violence, and it wants to incite others to be violent against you. What better way to make them afraid of you? And thus encourage them not to listen to you at all. Because remember, if you're in a cult, the best way to keep you in that cult is to completely shut you off from the outside world, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to keep them there, because their lies are so fragile and so easily disproven that they have to keep you completely isolated from anyone who could show you the difference.
Yep.
Right. And so this is what the left is now pushing, is that they're taking a tragedy without any proof, trying to claim, oh, you see, this is what they wanted, and this is the natural outcome of their kind of talk. I'm like, this is basically gaslighting 101.
Yep, it is definitely.
And of course, the view is
and
Exhibit A.
It wouldn't be a gaslighting 101 without the View getting involved.
Oh boy!
So enjoy. This is just not going to be entertaining in any way.
No way.
And someone came to that place.
And that's what's so sad. And I don't know that they hide behind religion, because I said this on this show once before. Jesus would be the Grand Marshal at the Pride Parade.
I don't mean about people. I mean in every argument we have.
But here's
we weaponize religion.
Here's my question.
But it's wrong.
If you're so afraid, why are you going over there?
Yeah.
If they scare you so much, leave them alone.
No, no. These are two of the big. I don't know if you want to talk about this first, Stephen. Or you want me to go into her?
Well, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. So this is why I can't stand The View. The View is the best example of an echo chamber. The best example I've ever heard. Whenever they have somebody in there who's an actual conservative, a legitimate conservative, all they can do is scream over them. They scream at them. They try to scream over them. They don't let them talk because they can't allow you to have a voice. Only their voice is logical. Mm-hmm. But then on top of that, the big problem here is like they say outrageous things like they do, and nobody objects. It was like, oh yes, cluck, 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 yes, cluck, 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 cluck. Like they're like just trained hens. When she said that Jesus would be the Grand Marshal of the Grand Parade, this is basically a complete expansion of the idea that like people used. They took the phrase Jesus would bake the gay cake, and they expanded it to Jesus would be the Grand Marshal. What this is a talking point from the left that is expanded out of control. It basically says Jesus ate with the sinners, and he associated with the tax collectors and prostitutes. This is where they get this idea. They take a tiny little thing in the Gospels where Jesus ate with the tax collectors and the marginalized, and they take this and they shove it to such prominence because they read that and they imagine it to mean that Jesus ate with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. Thus, Jesus approved that he cheered on their tax collecting and cheered on the prostitution, and he would have been the biggest advocates for the tax collecting and for the prostitution and all this kind of stuff. What these people are is that they're blatant liars, and people who listen to them have bought these talking points so much that they actually believe that they're true, to the point where any Christian worth their salt would be able to debunk these like nonsensical phrases in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
they're like, so brutal.
The arguments that so many of these people use are so childlike.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, like you go after homosexual people, but you still wear clothes made of different threads, and I'm like, yeah. I'm like, do you understand what the old versus the new covenant is? And they're like, I understand what a hypocrite is, and I'm like,
do you now?
Okay. There's no point debating theology with you because you have the understanding of a toddler. Because you've basically read what you want to read, and anything else you've thrown out the window. Because the Old and New Covenant is quite clear on these things. And of course, homosexuality is not mentioned once or twice. It's mentioned many, many times in Scripture. Whereas you don't find that so much about having cloths of different threads. Yep.
Yeah, the left is really good at finding loopholes. And what they do, and by the way, this is anybody who does apologetics with any kind of like regularity, you know that this is what they do on every topic. When it comes to evolution, people will find all sorts of loophole passages in the Bible that supposedly support evolution. People will find a loophole passages in the Bible about abortion. My favorite is Numbers 5, where they find this very odd little thing where it talks about like a woman. The whole focus is on a woman caught in adultery, but they focus in on this one little part that talks about what the outcome of her of this ceremony will be, which like they think it means like that the ceremony is an abortion.
No,
and I'm like, no, because it doesn't say that it automatically leads to abortion. It says it may lead to, and there's not even any clarity that what happens is that a child dies in her womb. All it means that her thigh will
swell and fall away.
What does that mean? There's a lot of debate about that. It's not even clear.
And
but
it's
again,
it's only really the NIV that says her womb will miscarry, and it's like, that's a bit of an exaggeration considering no other translation says that.
Yes, exactly. And the NIV is notorious for having some really bad mistranslations and all things. But anyways, the point being, when she says with such force that Jesus would be at the head of the Pride Parade, This is a lady who has I'm not even going to say virtually. This is a lady who probably has absolutely zero actual knowledge of the Bible. I guarantee you, this lady has probably never even read a full chapter or a full book in anywhere in the Bible. And yet she has the gall to go on live television and proclaim that she has figured out Jesus and she knows Jesus better than people who follow Christ.
Yep.
This is like the arrogance of these people. Like, she is an arrogant twat who doesn't know anything about the Bible.
Yeah.
And she's going on there and just like talking like she knows everything.
Yeah.
And then you have Whoopi Goldberg, who goes on and says, like, why are you so afraid? If you don't like it, then just stay home.
Just stay home. Don't go.
No, because what she's saying is you have to accept that we are going to take over everything.
Yeah.
And you're better. You just need to stay in your home and just let us basically run amok over your entire society.
Yeah.
This is the kind of idea, because remember what the left wants and these lunatics want is they want you to be silent so that they can basically get away with whatever they want
quietly take
without any opposition.
Yep.
They want you to stop opposing them so that they can get whatever they want.
Well, and they claim that any opposition from you is an act of violence or an active promotion of violence.
Yes.
When in reality, if you look at what these creeps and pedophiles and drag performers want, like, this is something which we just found out about today. There's an article from Fox News talking about the origin of Drag Queen Story Hour. Mm-hmm. So the key figure in this transition was a genderqueer college professor and drag queen.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yep.
Before you read this part, I know it's going to be a little off-putting. Can you actually just show the title of the of the article and then go back to the thing, just so people can
the
find
title
it when they...
From Fox News: Drag Queen Story Hour's radical origins and the subversive sexualization of our kids.
Yeah, so this was like little under a month ago, October 29th.
Yeah.
I didn't even hear about this until it was brought up by Matt Walsh on his show, and this is so much more helpful and so massively important in understanding what this is. Drag Queen Story Hour is not an organic movement. This was a planned and strategic plan of attack by these people. Nothing that they do is organic, by the way. I want to basically point this out. Everything that they've done from the beginning to the end, nothing has been by chance. They planned everything.
Everything's been deliberate.
I remember we've mentioned this before. The entire takeover by the gay lobby, remember the gay agenda, that whole conspiracy theory thing. There's a book that exists that lays it out in graphic detail. After the ball, I forget who the authors were, but that one demonstrated and proved with absolute certainty that this was a concerted, planned strategy of how to make sure that America would accept the gay agenda and the gay the entire LGBT message.
Yep.
And they had it all planned out. And then this is only an expansion of that.
This is an expansion, and this is more of an elaboration. So the key figure in this transition was a genderqueer college professor and drag queen named Harris Kornstein, stage name Little Miss Hot Mess, who hosted some of the original readings in public libraries and sits on the board of Drag Queen Story Hour, the nonprofit organization founded by Michelle T. in 2015 to promote children's drag performances. Kornstein also co-wrote the manifesto for the movement, Drag Pedagogy, the playful practice of queer imagination in early childhood. With Harper Keenan. They proposed drag pedagogy as a new teaching method designed to stimulate the queer imagination, teaching kids how to live queerly. Though Drag Queen Story Hour events are often billed as family-friendly, quote-unquote, Kornstein and Keenan explained this is a form of code. Here, Drag Queen Story Hour is family-friendly in the sense of family as an old queer code to identify and connect with other queers on the street. That is, the goal is not to reinforce the biological family, but to facilitate the child's transition into the ideological family. The organizers of this understand they must manage their public image to continue enjoying access to public libraries and public schools. They have learned how to speak in code to NGOs and to appease the anxieties of parents while subtly promoting the ideology of queer theory to children.
Yeah. So let me unpack that for those who are trying to make sense, head nor tails of that entire statement. What they basically admitted, and these are by the way, these are the architects. Remember, do you remember, Stephen, when you watched the Matrix, the trilogy, the second movie?
Yep.
And Neo finally gets down to the architect, and you realize that the architect. I know it's like the terrible
the
reveal,
joke of the film.
The joke of the film. But basically, the concept is the architect was behind it all. He's the one that planned it all. He's the original mastermind behind the thing. These people these two people are the masterminds. They're the architects behind this entire idea. Okay, the drag queen story hour did not start spontaneously, like organically or something like that. It's a planned. Think about they think that we're in a war, and in a war you have strategic battle plans. So I remember I used to study World War II history. When I studied that, I know what the Battle of the Bulge was. The Battle of the Bulge was not like the Germans were like, oh, let's just throw a whole bunch of troops here and just hope for the best.
That our tanks win.
Yeah, they had a strategy, and it was actually a viable strategy. They were hoping to divide the Allied forces at a time when their supply chains were weak, hoping to drive through until they got to a certain port, and they were hoping that by dividing the Allied forces, they could essentially create I remember there's a whole strategy to it. But you look at it, you're like, okay, maybe they overestimated their abilities, but it was not a just totally out of left field idea. They had a strategy to it. The Drag Queen Story Hour has the same idea, the same MO. They have a goal. Their goal is they want to turn society, and they want society to accept LGBT everything. And they want to make it okay. So first of all, it's societal acceptance. The second is they want to make it okay for LGBT indoctrination of children, and particularly in schools. And these are two goals that can be achieved by Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yep.
They dressed it up in a very, very innocent sounding thing. It's like, oh, we're going to read very innocent books to children. Well, one of the things they don't tell you is that they read LGBT friendly books to children. They don't read Dr. Seuss. They read LGBT books and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But more importantly, to unpack this, what they admitted is that first, two things that they admitted. One is that the goal of these Drag Queen Story Hours is to stimulate the queer imagination of children, to teach children how to live queerly. In other words, this is grooming. That is by definition grooming. Second, when they say family friendly, because we've mocked the concept of family friendly before. We showed a parent at a very prominent, I think a public hearing or whatever. She mocked the concept of family friendly. She was like, "This doesn't make you put family friendly on anything. It sounds great." That's because they admitted that family friendly is code for queer friendly. In other words, LGBT.
Ideological family.
Yes, the ideological. In other words, they want children to completely embrace the LGBT community so that they're more easily taken in by the LGBT. This is intentionally predatory, totally predatory in nature. And it is absolutely, it's so obvious by the fact that the very people who created and who run the home base for this entire strategy have admitted that that's their goal. You could take this and show it to people and be, by the way, did you know that the authors, the two men who created this entire initiative have admitted that they not only do they want to indoctrinate children into being queer, but that they intentionally want to incorporate children into the LGBT community. and that they use drag queen story hours to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Suddenly people will be like, "Oh, I thought this was just about inclusion and being friendly to people." I'm like, "No. It's an intentional, it's predatory."
Mm-hmm.
You can tell people that. So again, just to kind of put a big close to the whole thing, this is what they do. They throw people, they put these people in there, they plan for the opposition, they paint the opposition as mean and selfish and totally they're jerks, and then they paint themselves as victims. And then they do it all over again. This is war. They're literally like predator. They're like wolves going to each school, each library, and literally preying on children. It's quite sad and quite heartbreaking what they're doing in plain sight.
Yep.
But it's catching on.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we could talk about this stuff for a very, very long time.
Yeah, sorry.
But we do need to move on. Thank you, Danny. It was very insightful and informative. And I agree with pretty much everything that you said there.
Cool.
That it's just to brainwash kids. Family friendly is totally a joke at these events. And like I've said to so many people, they're inherently sexual. They're basically burlesque shows that are hidden as family friendly so that they can indoctrinate kids and sexualize them from very, very young ages.
Yeah.
But now moving on to something completely different. At least you think. Let's talk about FIFA. So, massive upsets at the World Cup 2022. Saudi Arabia delivers seismic shock, but don't count Argentina out. It will go down as one of the World Cup's biggest shocks. All the pre-match talk was about how this could finally be Lionel Messi's year, how Argentina could be crowned world champions for the first time since 1986, how Saudi Arabia had no chance. What a difference 90 minutes make.
Yeah.
As a heroic Saudi side celebrated their stunning 2-1 win with the jubilant fans in the deafening Lusail Stadium, Argentina's disbelieving players crept off with their supporters shocked in almost total silence. There was no sign of the results at halftime. Messi had slotted Argentina ahead from the penalty spot. 3 other efforts had been ruled out for offside, and Saudi Arabia looked to be settling in for damage limitation. Mm-hmm. Then 2 Saudi goals in 6 crazy minutes early in the second half entirely changed the narrative. And despite plenty of prodding and probing from Messi and co., the underdogs valiantly held off to a result that will never be forgotten by the thousands of fans fortunate enough to witness it. Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia's King Salman even announced a public holiday on Wednesday.
It was true. Couldn't believe that. I was like, this is how big it was in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
What damage has this done to what is surely left of Messi's last stab at World Cup glory? Ooh.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal because Saudi Arabia, what were they ranked? I think it says a little bit below.
I think they're went in really low.
They're like 51st, I think it was, like the world. Like they were really low.
Ranked 51st in the world, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they had like a numbers below. Like it was, go all the way to the bottom, right where they have little percentages. Go down. Keep going. Keep going. Very, very, very bottom. Right there. Okay, so here's how Saudi Arabia was ranked. Chance of victory for winning team. Saudi Arabia had a chance of victory of 8.7% of winning the World Cup. This is how low their chances are of winning the World Cup were. Argentina was ranked like 3rd.
Yep.
Of like the top countries in the world. So this is like a David versus Goliath thing. Yep. And dang, like they did really. I watched that game, and like not only did like Argentina played very well. They seriously did. They played very well. They had 2 goals, 2 brilliant goals that were called back on an offside.
Yep.
And I was like, one of those. I was like, that offside was so razor thin that I was like, almost like that. That's almost like nitpicking kind of razor thin. Like his arm was in the offside, but not his feet.
Oh, I was like, it's kind of like the nitpicking, which like when we were talking about the game that had the Leafs eliminated from the playoffs last season and the playoffs and the penalty that took away their goal, and the guy's like, the other player fell down, but you penalized the guy who fell down.
Yes.
What?
Like that kind of nitpicking. So
It's
it
like,
was
that's garbage.
yeah, it was pretty bad. So I watched the highlights. The game was pretty remarkable. So already in the World Cup, that's kind of the big sports story that came out. Now, obviously, you think like it's all about the game, but unfortunately, the World Cup has been hijacked again because we can't have sports without the LGBT, like the rainbow alphabet people jumping in and wanting to basically make it all about themselves again.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way it is.
Yeah. From the FIFA president, I feel gay. FIFA chief attempts to empathize with marginalized.
Marginalized.
Oh no. Well, he's basically trying to make peace between people who are getting angry about Qatar's legitimate stance of opposing homosexual marriage and not being super kind to gays, and the Western stance, which is just like, oh well, drag queen story hour is totally fine. And so they're trying to appease both sides, and he's looking like a complete idiot and a jackass for it. But let us enjoy his complete nonsensical tirade.
I have very strong feelings. I can tell you that.
Feelings.
Nothing more than feelings.
Today I feel Qatari.
You're French.
Qatari.
Today I feel Arab.
You're French.
Today I feel African.
You're French, dumbass.
African is not a feeling. I can't feel
Today
African.
I feel gay.
That is the first feeling.
Yeah.
Today I feel disabled.
That's not a thing. You can't feel that.
I don't.
Today I feel a migrant worker.
Not. Oh my gosh, that's brutal. Considering that, like, compared to the gay thing, the migrant worker is so much of a bigger issue than Qatar not embracing homosexual marriage. Do you know how many, Danny? Okay, if you could stop laughing for 20 seconds, it was so bad. I know.
So bad. It's like today I feel chair.
Yeah.
Today I feel like rainbow.
I feel like things
Today
that do not
I
exist.
feel like light breeze.
Yeah.
Today I feel like hot tea on summer day. It's like just name random nonsensical things and be like, I feel, therefore I am. It's like, oh gosh, like what a moron.
Fool. Yeah, I know.
What a moron.
But what I'm saying is this guy, this leader of FIFA, is just making up stuff. And
no. It's not that he's making up stuff. It's that this is the best he came up with.
Yeah, this is how he said he was going to appease. Oh, and where I was going to go with this.
This is the best he had.
Yeah, like the only thing that actually, like the only issue, or the only serious issue with Qatar as a host of FIFA is the migrant workers. Do you know how many migrant workers died, Danny?
It was like hundreds of thousands. It was something ridiculous.
It was almost 7,000 migrant workers died making these stadiums.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm
like,
those are actual, like, that's actually like slave labor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, that's a serious issue.
That's
a
like
much bigger issue than what the Western nations have decided to focus on, which is this nonsense of the FIFA-approved no discrimination armband. So Canada's Atiba Hutchinson will wear FIFA's official no discrimination armbands, while some teams had planned to wear One Love armbands, seen as a rebuke to host nation Qatar's human rights record. The Canadian men had not detailed their plans. FIFA's threat of an on-field punishment via showing a yellow card for players pushed some World Cup teams to back down Monday and abandon a plan for their captains to wear the armbands in question. That would mean the captain would start the game with a yellow, just one caution away from ejection from that game and the next, which of course would severely limit their chances of winning. European teams may have expected merely to be fined. FIFA rules say for FIFA final competitions, the captain of each team must wear the captain's armband provided by FIFA. No one wore the One Love armband Monday. England's Harry Kane wore the approved black no discrimination armband in the match with Iran. So,
Cowards!
Oh yeah. No, he's just a coward.
Cowards.
Like if these people actually wanted to stand up for something, if you want to look for a group that's standing up for something, look at Iran. Iran refused to stand up for their own national anthem. They refused to sing it.
Yeah.
They refused to actually provide FIFA had to provide a singer for their national anthem because the Iranian national team wouldn't do it because they said, "Screw you, Iran. We're not we don't want to represent you."
Can you actually look that up, Stephen? Like while
Sure.
I talk about one thing I wanted to mention about this this whole the World Cup has provided one of the best opportunities to really show if the people from these countries, like all these sports athletes and all these lofty leftists, are if they're really heroes or if they're only virtual signaling for like the give me points. Okay, so when people protest for a cause that everyone will applaud them and give them praise and pat them on the back for, that's not bravery. That's literally nothing more than appeasing it's clapter.
Yeah.
There's no risk involved, and it's all gain.
Yeah.
There's no heroism in that. If you go out there today and if anybody goes out there and goes on Twitter and says, "I love gay people," you're going to get so many accolades.
You're going to get applause and accolades.
Yeah, everything. You're going to get maybe a Medal of Honor or something like that.
Well,
that's not bravery.
If these European players, it's like, oh, they would have got fined. They would have got a yellow card. It's that's not a real and that's not even they're not willing to do that. But that's not even a serious consequence. No. It's like, oh, you would have gotten a yellow card. What does that mean? Well, you just means you can't foul anybody for your game.
No. You do not. Do you actually know what the yellow card is?
I know what a yellow card is. It's basically a warning card, and if you get another yellow card, then that's an instant red card and ejection from that game and the next.
Yeah,
and
but
so
do you know what that also means, though?
A yellow card?
I mean, no, a red card.
Oh, a red card is an automatic ejection from that game and the next.
But that means that for that game and the next, you're playing with one less player.
I know. Yes.
That means that you're severely handicapped.
Yes.
For the following
they
game,
weren't threatening them with red cards. They were threatening them with yellows.
But the yellow card means that you're one step closer to
you're on basically a high warning.
Yeah. And what we're saying is that the people from Iran risk actual life and death.
Yes, they do.
That's true heroism. That's true bravery. Whereas the people in the West are so privileged that they won't even risk losing a game for what they believe.
Yeah,
that's how completely vapid their adherence to their cause is.
Yeah,
they won't risk anything for it.
This article: national anthem. Iranian team refuses to sing national anthem ahead of FIFA World Cup game against England in support of anti-government protesters back home. They stood impassively and grim-faced as their anthem rang out around the international stadium.
Yeah,
Iran's players did not sing. Ahead of the game in Qatar, captain Alireza Jahanbakhsh said the team would decide together whether or not to refuse to sing in show of solidarity. The Iranian players stood impassively and grim-faced.
Yep. And I will say this: the Iran is darn serious when it comes to consequences on these things. There was a story I remember reading about I think she was a rock climber, like in a rock climbing competition. This girl, in a rush to make the deadline for her competition, she wasn't able to get her hijab on, for the competition. So she climbed without it. When she came back to Iran, she was mercilessly beaten.
Yep.
Because she didn't have her hijab. That's how seriously they take it.
The Iranian government is just flat out evil. There's no other way. What they're doing to their people right now is pretty horrible. So they're bringing awareness to something that is very serious and seriously affecting the lives of people. The Qatar government totally. You'll notice that none of these people are actually pointing out, even remotely pointing out, the actual serious crimes, human rights abuses. No, they're only pointing out the human rights abuses
that are vogue and are
Yeah.
popular in their country, that are going to get them the likes and the applause by their people, right? Not the ones that are like
talking about like exposing human trafficking and slavery.
No. Oh, those are not
because then you'd have to focus on the rest of the Muslim world, and you'd have to focus on East Asia and a lot of places around the world. Because guess what? There's more slaves now than at any other point in human history.
Those are the ugly facts.
Yeah, those
Stephen.
are the ugly facts. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about one love. No,
because Stephen, today I feel gay. Today I feel like chair. Today I feel like warm breeze.
I feel
today,
like chair.
I feel fart.
Yeah.
It's like, how is this guy the chief of FIFA?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, FIFA's not the only organization which went woke. The NHL went even more woke.
I can't stop laughing at that guy.
Non-binary identity is real. The NHL goes full woke in a tweet. Is the league trying to alienate fans? Trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary identity is real.
Question: what is a woman?
Yep. Exactly.
That's how I would reply to them.
Yeah. This is just so stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, just a real quick summary of this whole story. The NHL responded to somebody like people actually bringing up real questions about, because what they're doing is they're trying to say we're inclusive, so we're including we're celebrating the fact that we're having this trans what was it, like a trans
Day of Remembrance?
No. Maybe I read it somewhere else. Basically, the idea was that they're having some kind of what do they call it when they bring new players into the league? The draft, or something like a draft. But that they were having a whole bunch of trans people in the draft, new trans people, and they were getting into the women's leagues, and the people were pointing that out, be like, "What's going on with this? Are we sure? Are you sure we're okay with having men in women's leagues?" And the NHL's and the NHL's response to show those people was saying trans women are women, trans men are men. This is the stupid talking points that I hate to say it, but stupid people use when they don't have a real argument. The fact that the NHL used this as their gotcha. It's oh my gosh, you're basically it's basically us saying my body, my choice.
Yeah.
That's not an intelligent argument. No. That's a go-to last defense when you have no argument. But and then not long after they started doing this, they shut down comments. Which of course they do, because they don't want to have an argument. They just want you to shut up and listen and do what they say.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's brutal. Oh my gosh. So yeah, the NHL, the FIFA, everything's turning gay. They're all going gay.
They're all going gay. Yikes.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. It is truly, truly terrible. Anyways. Yeah.
Well, let's transition to a hard.
Let's transition to something which is not as terrible, mainly because there's now being focus put upon it.
Yes. So,
from Fox News, Arizona Attorney General's office demands answers to myriad voting issues in Maricopa County. These complaints go beyond pure speculation, Arizona Assistant Attorney General says.
Yeah, it's about time.
So they're demanding answers to a myriad problems, breathing new life into the campaign for Republican gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake, who refused to concede to Democratic Governor-elect Katie Hobbs. Assistant Attorney General Jennifer Wright sent a letter Saturday to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office demanding explanations for the election issues before the results can be certified next week. The Elections Integrity Unit of the Arizona Attorney General's Office has received hundreds of complaints since Election Day pertaining to issues related to the administration of the general election in Maricopa. These complaints go beyond pure speculation, which include first-hand witness accounts that raise concerns regarding Maricopa's lawful compliance with Arizona election law.
By the way, really quick note for anybody who's reading this along with us. But whenever the media says hundreds, you have to translate. They mean thousands.
Yep.
They always downplay. And we've seen this firsthand, by the way.
Yeah.
With the freedom protest here in Calgary, it's a couple hundred people showed up, there was several thousand, but Do you know how to count? Like, literally.
Yeah. So according
Anyways,
to Maricopa County election officials, at least 60 voting locations experienced issues with their ballot-on-demand printers. The Assistant Attorney General is demanding an in-depth report addressing these issues, as well as the checkout procedures at each polling location and each location's official ballot report. Thomas Liddy, a civil division chief at the Maricopa County's attorney's office, told Fox News Digital that his office will start gathering the materials necessary to respond to Wright's letter. And like I've heard some stuff. There was a witness video, a video of one of the poll watchers.
Okay.
She was talking about what was it? Box number 3.
Yeah, the supposedly
the unusable box.
Yeah, the box of like extra ballots that they're going to count later in a nonpartisan way.
Well, and then when they were looking at, well, it wasn't even that. It was like, no, like tabulator 3 is having some issues, so we can't use tabulator 3. And then they were like going through the end results, and it's like, oh, tabulator 3, even though we weren't allowed to use it all day, had 200 ballots automatically.
So the machine that was supposedly not
It
being
was
used
it was
at
not
all.
it was out of use, and then at the end of the day, they had 200 more ballots than voters, and 200 of them were from that machine.
Okay, that makes no sense.
Yep.
Which is something that you think you want to look into.
You think you want to look into it because it's like,
yeah,
that's really, really suspect. And she's like,
about
I don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist, but like this had to be mentioned, and it's like, well, thank you for mentioning it, because no freaking kidding, it needs to be mentioned.
I think the only thing that really makes a difference between conspiracy theorist and actual legitimate like scrutiny is when there's actual evidence.
Oh yeah,
that you're actually going on. Like,
well,
if you're speculating there's an alien base, moon base on the dark side of the moon, that's just speculation. But if you have like hard like actual photographs and video and all sorts of like I don't know, evidence that actually shows maybe there's something to it, then it stops being a conspiracy theory. Okay? Same thing here. When you actually have like actual like witness reports telling you things like this, you're like there's stuff that
you talk to people. Well, what happened in Georgia in 2020, and what happened in Georgia, of course, was that they counted things after hours when nobody was watching. I'm like, all right, that's illegal. And they're like, no, that video was doctored. And I'm like, they have
when they couldn't prove that it was doctored.
Yeah, they can't prove that it's doctored, and so it's just like, well, it's false no matter what.
Well, those are legitimate ballots. It's like, yeah, but they weren't counted like in the proper
they're not
way.
Counted
no,
legally.
but they were just like they always came up.
They were
with
just like
something new.
everything else. It's like, no, they're not. I had an argument with somebody about ballot harvesting, and he's like, why does it matter like how the ballots were collected? And I'm like, well, how can you be sure that the person whose ballot it's supposed to be actually sent that ballot? He's like, well, we just have to trust the electorate. And I'm like, there's no way that we're going to be trusting the electorate. Are you insane? And I'm like, okay, well, if we're supposed to be trusting the electorate, then why don't we have voter IDs? I'm like, we trust ballot harvesting a lot more if they actually had voter ID. And he's like, well, that's a potential issue of racism. And I'm like, you're an idiot. No,
you know what you should.
You're just too stupid.
You know what you should say to a guy like that? You should be like, you know what? Would you if we changed the rules in university for like the final exams, that you know what, you don't have to show your student ID. You just have to like put a check mark next to your name to prove that you were there.
Yep.
Do you think that anybody would cheat in that system? And he'd be like, well, no. I'm like, you don't think that somebody would think, I could just get some like brilliant guy, pay him like, I don't know, like $50 to take my exam for me, and all he has to do is show up and check my name and take my exam for me, and he makes a easy $50. You don't think somebody would do that? You know, like you'd have to be stupid not to realize that if you don't have some kind of verification, that you can get anybody to take your exam for you, and basically scam your way into an easy grade.
Yep.
Like it's we have these protections for a reason. Like the people who deny these things have not really thought them through.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really want to think them through. They just like
they just want to buy whatever they've been told. That's
they
easy.
just-
and otherwise, if they even question it, we think to our friend Chad. Like Chad questioned one thing. He questioned the vaccine agenda. And he had so many of his friends just drop him on the spot.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, no, you're problematic and we can't spend time with you. And it's like, really? But I agree with you on pretty much everything else. Yeah, no, we can't spend time with you. You're a conspiracy theorist and we hate you.
You're the worst.
This is how the left treats those who even question the narrative and the dogma of the left. And so that's why very, very few people do, because everyone they know will turn on them, because that's how they've been programmed. Like we think back to Thursday about that woman who was saying about how her father was a racist, white supremacist traitor and all these things. And it's like, that's how they'll treat their family members. How will they treat you if you even question the slightest iota? You basically need to abandon everything that you stand for, because you'll have to make entirely new connections and entirely new friend groups if you choose to even move slightly on the political spectrum.
It's funny. It's almost like how cults work. It's almost weird.
Almost.
Yeah, I felt like that what happened with Chad is like I felt like that meme, that who's that actor, the one like that says first time and he's got like his head in a noose. He's like, first time, the guy's like crying and all that.
Yep.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Oh
yeah. James Franco.
Yeah.
Where he's like basically going to be hung, but it's like the second time there, like he was going to be hung before, but I guess it never worked. And the guy's like freaking out and like crying. He's like, it's like first time. I feel like that's with Chad, because it's like he's going through that the first time. And we're like, oh yeah, we've been through that.
Yeah, we've been through that.
This your first time.
We were there. We were there like 4 years ago. Hi, buddy.
Yeah, seriously. Like,
and everybody who's just like who starts to accept that the narrative the left has pushed upon them is wrong, and it's like, hey, buddy, glad to see you kind of finally caught sense.
Yeah. The red pill has worked.
Yeah, the red pill
finally worked its way into
finally
the system.
reached your freaking liver, man.
Oh boy, it's about time.
Yeah, it's about freaking time.
But here's
talking about things being about freaking time. Let's talk about CBS. My goodness, CBS, you are a joke. So CBS tarred and feathered for admitting existence of Hunter Biden's laptop 2 years after New York Post report. It only took CBS News 2 federal election cycles to report this major Joe Biden scandal. Judicial Watch President Tom Fittner tweeted. Conservatives on Twitter tore into CBS for finally admitting the controversial Hunter Biden laptop containing the personal files and shady business dealings of President Joe Biden's son in foreign countries is real. On Monday, the news network confirmed via its own forensic investigation the laptop the New York Post first reported on was in fact real. Major networks at the time refused to acknowledge the story as Twitter and Facebook moves to stifle the Post story ahead of the 2020 presidential election. CBS anchor Tony Dokupul reported on CBS Mornings that the network obtained the laptop's data not through a third party or political operative, but directly from the source who told us they provided it to the FBI under subpoena. He added, we commissioned an independent forensic review to determine its authenticity.
Oh, such great journalism there.
Yeah.
If only a phone call would have would have sufficed to make that. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm trying to adapt to the new program, because usually I have like this transition page, so I have to remember to click on the button.
Go back and forth.
Yep, because it's on the other side.
And he's only working with one eye.
And I'm only working with one eye, and so
we got Pirate Steve over here. He's trying to
covering my eye does make it easier, so I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever I have to read something or switch sources, I have to move my hand, and oh my gosh, my eye hurts.
If anybody wants to send him a parrot, to put on his shoulder, I can give you. I
or
can give you Steve
an eye patch. Well,
eye patch would also work.
Maybe
Pro Freedom eye patch.
Yeah, I'm gonna order. I'm gonna order some like night glasses.
Hey, that works really well with Salty Steve.
Yeah. So
Salty Steve, the pirate.
the pirate.
The scourge of the seas.
Yeah.
Scourge of the seven seas. Now, okay, so a quick note about this story. The Hunter Biden laptop story was pretty much confirmed right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like it was very obvious for anybody who had even a skeptical eye that this story was like
Is that a joke?
legitimate.
Is that a joke?
I didn't realize it until after, but then I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna move past that. I didn't mean to make that. I just kind of like
You're
I'm just
dead to
gonna
me
pretend it didn't
again.
happen.
Again.
Anyway, so the Hunter Biden laptop story was very, very clearly like, legitimate. Like, initially I was like, okay, this seems like too good to be true.
Yeah.
Because it was right before the election. I'm like, what are the odds that something this big would come out? But then the more and more and more you hear, the more you're like, whoa, this is actually a legitimate thing. And like, you could say that, oh, okay, well, this is just like implicating Hunter. It's like, no, things on the laptop implicated that too, because in the big scheme of things, it at least implicates Joe Biden of having crooked business dealings with China and with Ukraine through his son.
Yeah.
He basically may have been using his son as a kind of third party agent to try to work special deals under the table.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal. Now, why have we not seen an investigation on this? It's because ever since that story broke, the DOJ didn't want to touch it, and since President Biden won, there was no investigation because the Democrats took over the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So they're not going to investigate their go-to guy for any fraud. This is why when the Republicans took over the House, they immediately launched an investigation because of course you should.
Mm-hmm.
Because the president has been implicated in a crime.
Yep.
Yeah, of course you should be like looking into that. The whole thing. Now, we want to contrast this where like the media before was like saying like, oh, but we're not sure. We're not sure. We're
not
really
going to
not
post
sure.
speculation. And
We're not going to
lies.
speculate. We're going to be very careful on this. They were like playing all like apologetically about like, oh, we can't verify. That's probably not true. Like if you actually want to give them the benefit of the doubt, like I'm sorry, but you really are foolish because these people are lying to your face. And this story, this is something that happened.
This is how things
recently.
Yeah, this happened recently, and this is how, of course, a media entity should be responding when they learn, like as soon as they learn that there is something that they need correction on. So AP fires reporter behind false report claiming Russia missiles struck Poland.
Yeah, so this a couple of weeks ago we talked about this.
Yeah, we did talk about this on Tuesday. Because we're like, oh my gosh, like Russia fired missiles into Poland, and it's like, nope.
Possibly World War II.
Yeah.
Or III, sorry.
Yeah.
World War III.
That report, which was widely cited across the internet and on cable news, was taken offline the following day
and replaced with
an editor's note admitting the single source, aka a senior U.S. intelligence official, was wrong, and that subsequent reporting showed that the missiles were Russian-made and most likely fired by Ukraine in defense against a Russian attack. On Monday, the Associated Press fired James Laporta, the investigative reporter responsible for that story. Confider has learned.
Yeah.
That's how you deal with inaccuracy when you're a news organization, because you have to be trustworthy. And so if somebody publishes something without fully verifying or vetting the source, then you fire that guy.
Yeah.
Which now these mainstream media organizations like CBS and MSNBC and CNN, when they learned that the Hunter Biden laptop story was real, which was before the election, when they learned that it was real, then they should have immediately printed a retraction and said, yep, this is real. We should be investigating this. Instead, they covered it up for 2 years until the midterm elections because they figured, oh, well, by now, the damage has, it won't matter. The damage will not affect Hunter or his father in any way. And we're hoping to get a new guy on the stand anyway. We're hoping to get a new presidential candidate for 2024. And so Biden will make a difference.
Yeah. Another big difference, too, is that, look at this story here. This story was from the AP, the Associated Press. This is considered to be the go-to source for like all the major news networks.
Yep.
They go to AP or they go to Reuters. Those are the two big. They just accept that their stories are true. Now, consider how recklessly every news organization jumped on this. The second they saw this, they're like, "Bam, okay," and they shouted it from the rooftops. The second it dropped, and it was almost like a competition to see who could shout louder, shout faster about this big story. This was trending like crazy.
Yep. World War III, Article 5, all those things were trending like nuts.
Yeah. But it proved afterwards to be a complete and total lie. Okay? So the idea that these news networks are super, they're like,
honest,
we got to be
and
careful.
trustworthy.
Hold on. We can't publish the story. We don't know if it's true. We don't know. We have to verify everything. We have to make sure it's true. If you're that's just complete nonsense. Like this story shows that they're willing to run with the most minimal amount of facts and almost no verification, just because if they feel like it's worth it. That the Hunter Biden story shows that the news media is completely and totally run by political agendas and political narratives.
Yep.
They're not run by, we want to make sure we got this right first before we confirm this or even run this story or something like that. No, they're liars, and they run political, politically motivated, like news reporting. So it was such a today was such a big contrast between the two. So yeah. And speaking of some of the fallout of the midterm elections, the Biden administration, of course, is expanding illegal immigration at the southern border. How are they doing this, Stephen?
So the administration is now vastly abusing the immigration process by pre-approving illegal aliens for entry into the United States while in Mexico.
Can you imagine that? You're pre-approved. You're pre-approved to commit a crime. You're pre-approved to get in there.
Welcome to the purge, everybody. The current immigration policies in the U.S. are not good enough for Obama and Biden, so these corrupt politicians have done all they can to allow legal immigrants without jobs, funding, health checks, or criminal background checks to invade the country. The Center for Immigration Studies released a report on the new method of illegal immigration promoted by the Biden admin, where illegals are given access to the United States while in Mexico. Rather than having them to pay smugglers to cross the Rio Grande, illegal immigrants are now given safe passage while still in Mexico.
Of course they are.
Yeah, what a joke.
By the way, imagine if your city was having pre-approved crime. You're like, you're about to rob that shop owner. Here's a pre-approved get out of jail free card. Here you go. Here you go. Yeah, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just go and take whatever you want. If they put up a big fight and all that, don't worry. We'll cover you. It's all good. Imagine a government pre-approving crime. That's how blatantly this government is breaking their own laws and hating their own citizens. It's pretty gnarly. Yeah. And speaking of that, so obviously the Democrats have been emboldened by the results of the midterms, but probably in one of the most egregious ramp ups of the whole thing is what is potentially about to drop in the Senate. So this is an article from the Federalist. It says Republicans Loomis Collins double down after voting to advance reckless same-sex marriage bill. So the bill opens the door further for those who hold and live by traditional views of marriage to be punished by LGBT activists. Right? So Republicans have a chance to save religious Americans from the avalanche of legal assault that will come to Democrats' ill-named Respect for Marriage Act. By the way, have you noticed how every single bill the Democrats give to their bills is almost entirely designed to be a guilt trip?
Yep.
Every single one. Like the Reducing Inflation Act, which absolutely does nothing to reduce. They should name the bills if you don't vote for this bill, you hate puppies bill.
Yeah. And of course, all their bills are not just a guilt trip, but they're also, in practicality, they are the opposite of whatever they say they're supposed to do. This bill is respect for marriage, and it's this entire bill is about changing the definition of marriage so that it suits whatever people want it to suit. And it's the Inflation Reduction Act. That it's it's mainly a climate change agenda bill, but in effect, it's just an extra spending bill, which is going to increase inflation. Like the Democrats have they don't care what words mean. They just care about sounding good, and their idiotic, uninformed base will go along with it no matter what because they're basically spoon-fed it.
Yeah, the lunatic leftist cult always uses language is their weapon. That's how they fight. They use language. So here, a good example here is underneath the title says, "No, the Respect for Marriage Act doesn't protect religious Americans." I don't know if you can scroll down there, Stephen. I'll read that part really quick. Go down. Yeah, right there. So some, such as Portman, Collins, and Tillis, tried to couch their support for the bill by erroneously arguing that the legislation will actually protect religious liberty and freedom of conscience. You would think that based on the name, but actually it does the opposite. In reality, the bill enables the opposite by empowering LGBT activists who have already exploited the legal system to target religious Americans. Its lame protections against being required to provide services celebrating same-sex marriage are limited to non-profit religious organizations, which clearly excludes businesses that aren't explicitly religious but can still be owned and operated by devout Christians. So basically, to break this down, in other words, what they're doing is they're taking like the already limited spaces in which a person can operate under Christian convictions, and basically pushing them right down to the bare bones minimum of only nonprofit religious.
You can have beliefs that go against the narrative, but only in church. And if you say those beliefs, or if you practice them in your life or at your workplace, then you can be tarred and feathered by the legal system because we say so.
Yeah. And if you think that the LGBT, activists, oh no, they wouldn't do that. Like, they are vindictive. No, everything that they've done recently has shown how vindictive. Like the attack that they did on what's that guy's name? The guy from the
Jack Phillips. Jack Phillips.
Yeah, Jack Phillips. That both of the lawsuits against them were completely vindictive and totally pre-planned. The attack on that poor Baronel. I forget her name. Baronel.
I don't remember.
It's here somewhere. Anyways, the attacks that they did on those two people, that florist and that wedding cake maker, were totally vindictive. Like, and by every definition of the word, they're vindictive and they're cruel. And these
Baronel Stutzman,
a
florist.
Those attacks on them, those lawsuits on them, are not because those people felt like victims, but because those people felt slighted and they wanted to get revenge. They're entirely motivated by revenge and vindictiveness. These people are not victims. They are vindictive, cruel tyrants who are exploiting the legal system in order to attack their political opponents.
Yep.
So what's potentially on the horizon for America is what the left will call securing the same-sex marriage protections for a community that supposedly is under threat, when in reality they're trying to transfer the threat and try to put a noose around the people who are actually being targeted and actually being attacked, which is the religious community. This has always been their goal. They want to push the religious community in the closet. And this is not, I didn't get this myself. This was author Michael Brown, who's written several books about it. He said, he's actually quoted LGBT activists and very prominent people who have literally said that their goal is to put the religious community in the closet. Mm-hmm. They want them to completely be silent in public and never speak about any opposition to the LGBT. Because remember, we've just covered how the rainbow mafia has basically taken over the narrative in FIFA. They took over the narrative in that club shooting, and they took over the narrative in just about everything, because they will not tolerate anything but complete and total acceptance, praise, and cheering of whatever they want. These are not good people. They're not tolerant. They're not kind. they dress themselves up like they're like bright and shiny people, but they're really no better than the favelas, like in Brazil, where they paint the favelas in these brightly colored, like nice shiny colors, like bright yellow, bright green, bright blue, and all that. But in reality, they're slums.
Yep.
And they're really terrible. They're like what Jesus said. They're whitewashed tombs. Yep. They look nice on the outside, but inside they're really
dark and hideous.
Dark and hideous things inside. The LGBT community, like Stephen and I have covered this for so long. We cover this all the time. And the more we look into what's really going on, the more we're like, man, like it is dark. It is genuinely dark what is really at the root of these movements.
Yep.
I truly understand when people say that these are purely demonic movements.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, I cannot agree more. Like, I'm not saying, of course, that every single person who ascribes to these ideologies or who lives under the protection of these ideologies is like that. A lot of them are just kind of going along. Oh, look, I get to be praised and be treated nice. You get the accolades. But in reality, the people behind these movements are really dark and twisted human beings who care nothing about anyone other than themselves. It's pretty dark.
Yep. And of course, when people care only about themselves, moving on to the next story, this is what happens. From the Daily Mail. I've never seen anything like this. Doctors warn America is running out of 4 child antibiotics and flu drugs as kids bear brunt of triple-demic. 4 crucial drugs for fighting respiratory illnesses are in short supply in America amid the triple-demic. Tamiflu, a favorite for treating the flu in hospitals in America, is in low supply amid a surge of infections. Supply in one of the most popular antibiotics used when a person is infected, amoxicillin, is also low, and both RSV and flu cases are at highs as the viruses strike down Americans with weakened immune systems. So they're reporting dwindling stocks of all these different antibiotics, which of course antibiotics are used to treat infections. And desperate parents report spending hours going from pharmacy to pharmacy to track down the drugs for their children. The shortages are being driven by surging demand. Several children's hospitals reached 100% capacity as rates of RSV and flu, both of which are deadly for youngsters, surged to their highest level in a decade for this time of year. A wave of lockdowns in 2020, as well as mitigation measures such as masking, isolation, this is total bogus, contributed to an unexpected drop in the rate of circulating viruses like flu or RSV, or just they wouldn't test.
They wouldn't test for that.
RSV cases and test positivity in the United States. Like, this is, like, they're testing month to month. PCR tests, of course, and they can change their rates as much as they want. But let's face it. People love to say that this is not a real thing. But the rush of RSV and the rush of infections of flu are, what is it? What's the term for it?
What are you talking about?
It's like an immune wave. And it's like where you're basically hidden away from the world and your body has no chance to develop an immune system. And then suddenly you get your first infection, your body has no idea how to fight it.
Immunocompromised?
No, not immunocompromised. It's like, I'll think about it.
Okay, well, while you think about it, like, so there's a couple things here. Like, obviously, this is a left-wing publication, so they're going to go with the narrative we've been told over the last 3 years during the pandemic is that the flu disappeared. Like, no, what actually happened is that they recategorized the flu and relabeled it as COVID. That's basically what they did. So, like, that was still there. Now, the real question is what actually happened to everyone, including children, during these 2 years that were, like, unprecedented in human history. Because remember, we've never locked down the way we did. We never had mask mandates to the extent that we did, and we never had like I don't even call it a vaccine, a treatment the way that we had. 3 of these things were completely and totally odd, and now we have the explosion of a major of RSV, which I remember reading somewhere. RSV was not severe for children before, but somehow now it's very severe. Right? And like flu was like same thing. It wasn't very severe before. So something happened in these past few years that triggered this sudden epidemic of children's RSV or something like these triple demic, like they call it, of COVID, RSV, and the flu that is now wiping out kids in large quantities. Okay, we don't know what it is specifically, but either you're going to believe them when they tell you that this is totally out of nowhere, we can see it coming or something like that, or you're going to have to be like, okay, maybe if you take a little bit of a skeptical look and be like, okay, is it possible that the masking in schools particularly may have triggered a lot of respiratory issues? Because remember, masking is not benign, especially when you force children to completely and totally compromise their breathing, their lung function, and their lung immunity using masks for so long. Secondly, how many of these children received the COVID vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
Did that have an effect? Because remember, one of the potential risks that we were looking at that may come with COVID vaccines is the potential impact on your immunity. Because this is something that I read in so many reports about the potential negative outcomes of COVID. Because not only were you more at risk of getting COVID, but you were more at risk of getting a whole bunch of other things, and potentially even RSV.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I can't say definitively, but I'm like, I know that these two things are related. Is there a possible connection? Well, I don't know. Yeah. And then possibly, how much did the lockdowns have to do with this?
Yep.
Because remember, during the lockdowns, children were kept inside for months at a time, not having any outside influence, basically being in the home for long periods of time. A lot of parents were overprotective to the point where they wouldn't even let their kids even go outside. Did that have an impact on them? So I just want to make sure that people understand that, yes, this is happening. The real question is why? Why is this happening? What led to it? Was it masks? Was it the vaccine? Was it the lockdowns? Was it some other thing or a combination of all three somehow? We don't know. But what we do know is they're using the same to try to scare you into doing the same mistakes again, which is, oh my goodness, the hospitals are going to get overburdened. We have to throw people back into their cages until we can protect the hospitals. And this is where they're trying to lead us right now, which is really sad. This is the same playbook, and unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's just getting at, because they keep going back to the same playbook. I don't know what you're looking up, Steve, but do you want me to keep going?
No, I'm not going to find it. I was trying to find. Okay, so I was basically trying to find what the term was for, because we've had masks and lockdowns, all these things where people were trying to isolate themselves. Mm-hmm. And use everything that they could to prevent any form of infection or germ or sickness.
Okay.
And because they were doing all these things and not having any sort of challenge to their immune system for a very long time, then their immune system has been weakened in the past couple years. And then now that they've been getting flu and RSV, that their body has no idea how to fight it. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find what the term for that is, because I know that a whole bunch of these mainstream media articles were like, "Oh, this is a myth. There's no evidence for this," and it's like, well, there's no current evidence for this. Everything that you find before 2018, when you look at how to boost your immune system and how to keep your immune system healthy, it's like, oh yeah, go outside, expose yourself to basic germs and bacteria, not purposely infect yourself to serious illnesses, but expose yourself to germs and bacteria so that your immune system can stay healthy. Whereas now they're like, no, that's a myth. It doesn't happen. It never worked. All you need to do is basically just stay healthy by eating right and exercising, and you don't ever have to go outside. And it's but what about exposing our immune system to nope, that's a myth. Never worked. It was all a lie. Mm-hmm. It's You guys are so corrupt and so implicit in the suffering of millions. It's like when they were recommending pandemic amnesty over the past few years, or like in the past couple months, no, you cannot give these people any form of amnesty because the evil that they have inflicted on hundreds of millions of people is just, it's too much to bear.
It's so as Christians we're all about forgiveness.
Yep.
But we have to remember there's two things. There's two very important things in Christianity. There's forgiveness and there's justice. You can't have justice if you just forgive every crime. If somebody kills somebody like completely unwarranted, unlawfully, that person should face the penalty for the crime. That's justice. But if you just say forgiveness is
everybody the same no matter their crime, and no matter
every
the
crime is
situation.
completely forgiven. No, that's not true. Amnesty is basically them trying to say, you know what, we shouldn't have to pay for our crimes.
Yep.
Because let's face it, if we really took stock, people did commit crimes.
Yep.
During these past 3 years, and they don't call them crimes because they've redefined the definition of crimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like forcing people to take something against their will was redefined.
Yeah,
that used to be a crime under the what do you call it, the Nuremberg codes.
Mm-hmm.
That was a crime. Oh, they redefined it. That's no longer a crime.
Yeah,
you can do that now. Force it, like getting kids to consent to like medical treatments without their parents' approval. That used to be a crime. Oh, not anymore.
No.
We redefined it. Now it's no longer a crime. We can get kids to sign up for all sorts of medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So they're crimes, but they don't call them crimes. And believe it or not, the Nazis did not consider their extermination of Jews to be crimes. This is why we had to have an international panel called the Nuremberg trials as a higher law that basically made what they did illegal, because the Germans had changed the laws to make killing and exterminating Jews legal.
Yep.
So don't tell me that like, oh, these are legal crimes. I'm like, well, no, it's that they did what they did was crimes. I don't know. I can't seem to find any. You'll have to figure out this term
I'll
later.
have to, if I find it, then I'll post it.
You'll have to let it go. Let it go.
Exactly. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
I've let
good,
you
buddy.
down, but I will not let it go. I will find a solution.
But here, like, let's move on to the next story here. So obviously, this story, they're pointing out something that, okay, here's the facts. There's the children are coming in record numbers to hospitals with attacks of RSV, flu, and COVID, right? And let's face it, like, did they say COVID as well, or did they say?
Yeah, they did.
Did they? Okay. So here's 3 reasons why I'm really suspicious about this. 1, flus. Yes, flus and RSV were almost always very mild in kids.
Yeah.
Like even I remember hearing a doctor saying RSV was never before a serious infection. It was like, yeah, it's a kid would have RSV, but they kind of get over it over like a weekend or something like that. But now they're getting in with serious cases.
Yeah.
So two things that were normally mild in children are now becoming severe. And then COVID, which you and I know was barely touching kids when it first came out, is now really heavily affecting kids.
Yep.
Something went off the deep end. And what are they trying to basically argue is that, oh my goodness, the hospitals. So that takes us very nicely into our next story.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened in Ontario.
Post-millennial. Radio host gives
Ottawa
school trustee the boot after she goes on insane pro-mask rant.
Yep.
Ottawa School Board trustees' interview with a local radio station ended abruptly on Tuesday after the discussion about a proposed mask mandate got heated and the host hung up on her. Dr. Nili Kaplan-Mirth was being interviewed by Bill Carroll on CRFA's The Morning Rush. The topic of conversation was the proposed Ottawa Carleton School mask mandate. And Kaplan-Mirth was on the attack right from the moment she was introduced, accusing Carroll of spreading misinformation. quote, I have to start off right by the bat by correcting misinformation that you just said, began trustee and family doctor Captain Mirth. COVID is not gone. COVID is still very much here, as is influenza, as is RSV. Okay, let's just watch this.
Mm-hmm.
And
listen, it's a radio thing.
Yeah. And from sounds of it, the video is going to be working and there's not going to be any interruptions. Because so far, the program is working. Yay.
Yay.
Dr. Neely Kaplan-Mirth, a family doctor in Central Ontario and Ottawa Carleton District School Board trustee who wants to bring masks back and has received some pretty nasty comments from people. Worried, in fact, that those nasty comments may persuade new trustees to vote against mask mandates. Doctor, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome, but I have to start off right off the bat by correcting the misinformation that you just said. So COVID is not gone. COVID is still very much here, as is influenza, as is RSV. So you're quoting somebody from Johns Hopkins who's only talking about RSV. In what we are saying...
Well, he's also talking about it's not the main problem.
Don't interrupt me, thank you. What we've been
Don't
talking about
interrupt me.
all along is the need for a layered approach. What we've been talking about all along is that we should be doing all the things, using all the tools that we have to help to keep children out of hospital. So, right
But
now...
Doctor, hold on. I'm talking...
I'm sorry. Well,
Don't interrupt me.
Doctor.
I'm sorry. If you're going to start the interview...
Hang up on her. Just hang up on her.
Yes! Thank you! Thank you!
Look,
Yeah,
Thank
shut up,
you.
Kind of
you
anger
whiny,
we don't need
angry
right now.
lady.
It's the kind of immaturity we don't need right now.
That's right.
Yes!
I've spoken with Dr. Paul Remiliotis and others on this show. This article
Uh-huh.
from the CBC quotes many other local doctors as well.
Yeah.
COVID is not the main problem. It's not what is filling up the ICUs. It's just not. This is why she gets angry emails and angry texts. That attitude.
Jeez.
Right? Accusing me of misinformation. Goes on an angry rant. Won't even let me respond.
Yes.
Dang.
It's like, don't
100%.
interrupt. Don't interrupt. Like, that was... Dang, that is how you respond to people like that.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, and like...
Yeah.
Because he was just trying to ask a basic question. He's like, okay, like according to like several doctors in the CBC article...
Don't interrupt me, Stephen.
No,
don't interrupt
me. Like, it's like,
Don't
no,
interrupt.
you have to let the other people talk.
No.
It's like, it's an absolute joke when it's that sort of reaction to a basic question trying to establish a line for what you're trying to claim.
Yep.
Like, I thought that conversation, like, I hadn't listened to it before. I thought this conversation was going to go very differently. But I'm glad that he was just like, nope, you're being stupid. We're not going to have that kind of stupidity on this show.
Yeah. Yeah, like imagine somebody going on your show and demanding that you listen and they speak,
Yeah,
and they
exactly.
speak as long as they want for like, and then you can't respond to anything. Like this is what bothers me about these people. This woman who like probably runs around like with their hands in the air, like holding their degree, be like, I'm a doctor. I know best and all that. Probably waves this like magic wand of credentials around and uses them as basically as a hammer to smash people on the head when she has to like talk about like policy. Now the next story, like obviously this is where the rubber hits the road.
Hold on, I actually want to check something.
Yeah, sure.
I want to do a quick Google search for this person because I want to see if that's an actual picture of her. It looks like it is. And like if you look at that picture from the Post Millennial, and I'll show you just
scary.
That one more time.
Scary.
I'll show you that picture of her. This is a video.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they were like having the video of this conversation while they were doing it. But this is someone who's listening via headphones and wearing masks while on a video call.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like that looks like her. She's on a video call and she's wearing a mask.
Yep. And she
Like,
has several.
You are so completely bonkers.
It's amazing that like you just looked up on Google and I think almost like a third to a half of her pictures
are her wearing
have
a mask.
her with a mask.
Yep.
Which should tell you something about how completely she's bought into this nonsense, right? Wow, this, but
well, like this is a picture of her alone in her office.
Yep.
And she's wearing a mask. It's just like it's all about the pandering. It's all about the virtue signaling. Like, this woman is absolutely out of her flipping mind.
This is part of why I argue that the people in this cult are in a cult.
Yep.
Because part of a cult is that you can't allow outside opinions, but another part of a cult is you have to force your religion on others. And this is why it took a really dark turn when I followed up on the story, and I found that what this was actually culminating in was an actual school board meeting in Ottawa. Yep. And this is like the story from CTV News.
So CTV News, Ottawa School Board meeting to discuss mask mandate disrupted by opponents.
Yeah, of course, the CTV that would say that.
Special board meeting of the Carleton School District Board Trustees were interrupted multiple times Tuesday evening as opponents of a mask mandate disrupted proceedings, causing the board chair to call recesses. The meeting was called to order a vote by trustee Dr. Nellie Kaplan-Murth that would require students and staff to wear masks until Ottawa Public Health declares influenza season has ended. The pediatric ICU occupancy is less than 85% for a period of 2 weeks, and Ottawa Public Health no longer advises the public to wear a mask to protect against exposure to airborne and respiratory viruses in indoor spaces. 6 public delegations spoke before the board, 3 in favor of mask mandate and 3 against. During the public presentations, board chair Lyra Evans had to remind the audience in attendance to keep noise to a minimum, as people could be heard clapping and shouting. The meeting was paused after several interruptions during a presentation by Dr. Lindy Sampson, Chief of Staff at the Children's Hospital. Sampson was describing the current situation, saying the hospital's intensive care unit was at 200% capacity on Monday, and the average wait time for non-emergency care was about 13 hours. Or was it 13 or 18? 13. She said that the evidence to support widespread mask use in reducing transmission of viral infections, or there is evidence to support, but during these points, Evan had to interrupt her presentation to ask audience members to be quiet, mainly because she's lying, and there is no evidence to support widespread mask use in reducing transmission of viral infections, especially not from randomized clinical trials. Every time you ask somebody to provide a randomized clinical trial, they run.
Yeah.
And of course, Kaplan-Murr told CTV News Ottawa that police were also called to the meeting. The meeting resumed shortly after a break of approximately 20 minutes to allow Sampson to complete a presentation. Second recess was called as Sampson was answering questions from trustees when audience members once again became rowdy after a woman was asked repeatedly to leave. The board is currently strongly encouraging students and staff to wear masks in schools, and schools have been provided signage to post at doors and around the schools. A recent survey of Ottawa public school principals estimate that fewer of 10% of students are wearing masks in schools currently, which delegations opposed to the mandate cited as evidence that parents do not want the board to impose one. No kidding.
Yeah, so right there is the most important thing about the entire thing.
Parents do not want it.
10% of children overall are wearing masks in schools. Why are they doing this? Because they can only get this level of compliance by
mandating and enforcing it.
By mandating and enforcing it.
Because that's the problem, is that if they're not forced to it, everyone will take them off. Almost everybody.
Yes.
If they're mandated to do it, then almost everyone will wear them, because especially in Canadian society, we live in a society of sheep and cowards.
Yeah.
There were so few people who will actually say, no, I'm not going to go along with this nonsense, because there's no science to back it up, and it's all just propaganda to see how much compliance we're going to go along with.
Yeah.
Like, so few people actually have the strength and courage to stand behind their convictions, and they're all just like, well, I don't want to get in trouble, and so I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to stand up. I'm going to go along. And then if somebody else goes along and be like, well, yeah, I think I agree with that, but I'm not going to take the consequence. I'm not going to take the punishment to do it myself, because I can't take consequences. I can't take punishment, because then I'll be ostracized. We cannot be afraid of ostracization. We can't be afraid of any of that. We have to have the courage to stand for what is right, no matter the consequences. Yeah. This is, of course, why, we know there's a high potential for consequences on Sunday. There is a potential for violence. There is a potential for issues. There's a potential even to be arrested by some woke cop.
Yep.
There's a reason we still do it, because it is right, and it is just, and it doesn't matter what consequences there are, because if you stand for what is right, then no consequence is enough.
Yeah, and right now, I've been bothered enough by, I see. Okay, so whenever I go out in the street, when I go to the store, when I go to the grocery store or clothing store or whatever else, I see people wearing masks. Then I also see them walking around with their kids wearing masks, and my heart goes out to them. I'm just like, ugh, these kids have no choice. Their parents have decided for them. And as much as I love, I want to give people the freedom to choose what they want. When a parent is choosing something that's harming
their kids,
child,
no,
it's like that. They don't. They're acting out of ignorance. So, one thing I created, and I'm going to start doing this myself. But if you want to do it too, I created a new blog on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, and the blog is entirely designed for one purpose only, and that is that you can actually send people directly to this link and just basically help them to see this is a very, very concise summary for people who want to actually doesn't come up, does it?
Well,
with the shrewddudes.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually set up the what do you call it, the Google search on it.
Well, it's come up with the dig it.
Anyways, so I set this up because what I'm going to do is I'm gonna give people a little piece of paper saying to them, I see you're wearing a mask. Have you ever actually looked at the science regarding masks? You got to put in the.
Yeah, I know.
Have you ever looked at the science regarding masks? And then I send them the Shrewd Dudes podcast. So it's right down to blog. And it's the first blog that comes up, to mask or not to mask. And this blog is basically designed for one thing. It's basically designed to show you, here's, I think I put in 6 true or false questions. Is it true that, I gave a couple of examples here. So true or false, health organizations like the CDC and Health Canada would never mislead the public about the effectiveness of masks. And then I go right into here's some facts. So the problem is that the big lie that we're being told right now is that masks are a tool. And they're a tool to help fight against viral infections. But in reality, we know the science. They're lying to you about the science. The science on masks is so piddly and so incredibly sparse that only people who are ignorant and only people who are who have malevolent intentions are the ones that are suggesting masks. So that lady, that doctor who's suggesting the mask, she drank the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. She completely bought into the idea that masks protect you from getting sick, from catching a virus or from spreading a virus, when nothing could be further from the truth. The most basic example of this I can give you is if there is a deadly virus that is infecting some kind of ward, you know what nobody does if you're a doctor. If you go into that ward, you know what you don't do? You don't go in with a mask, even an N95 mask, because they're not stupid. They go in with a fully encased, what are those called?
Respirator suit.
Respirator suit that allows absolutely no. It's a barrier, not a filter. People just lost their capacity.
Well, or if they are using a filter, then they're using one that you have to have a battery pack. And it's a constant supply of oxygen, and they're quadruple filtering the air.
Yes.
Before there's so many steps, and it's if you actually want to protect against a serious airborne illness, that's how you do it. You don't wear a simple piece of paper or fabric because that's not going to do jack all.
Yeah. And the problem is that the very solution that the person in Ottawa was offering for how to stop the spread may actually make the problem worse. Let's hypothesize for just a second and stop and think. I wonder if masks may be responsible for this sudden explosion in these new infections because they compromise the immune systems of children. What would be the worst thing you could do if masks were the cause of this sudden explosion in compromised immune systems, the worst thing you could do is to do the same thing. But nobody's talking about that because these people have completely lost sight of medicine, which is to do no harm and to prevent, not cause disease.
Yep.
But it's so lost on people. And if people really understood what was really going on and the truth about masks, like Stephen and I are not against masks. Masks are very useful when used for the proper purpose
and using them properly.
Yes, in a hospital setting
for very short-term use.
Yes, when you're using them in a hospital setting, when you're doing surgery, there's a reason why a surgical mask works, because it's supposed to stop like heavy liquids like saliva and blood from passing through. They're also supposed to prevent you from breathing bacteria into an open wound, and they're also supposed to prevent you. They're made for that purpose. You know what they're not made for is to prevent someone from catching a virus.
Yep.
And you can catch a virus not just through your mouth and your nose, but through your eyes, through your skin, through your ears, through a lot of different parts of your body. It's people have lost the ability to really critically think. And so I encourage people, like, read through this thing. If you think it's helpful, send it to your friends who think that, oh, masks are going to save us all. Send it to them and at least start a conversation. Because like I care about this stuff. I want to do my part. I've taken the time and the effort to create this stuff. All you have to do is share with your friends. So if you have friends and they totally believe in masks and you care about them, maybe send them this. Maybe this will be like the trigger that'd be like the straw that'd be like, okay, maybe I was lied to about masks. Because I will say this: the reason I started with the idea that the CDC and all these health officials, like, you know, that it's false that they would lie to you.
Yep.
It's because that's what people are banking on.
Because it's just like, well, I heard it from the CDC, and it's like, well, they're not reliable. And it's like, well, no. But they're the CDC. Like, what can we trust if not the CDC? And it's like, well,
not
you'll
the
have
CDC.
To decide for yourself,
you have to
but
trust
not
the
them.
science itself. Yeah.
Yeah. But
so yeah.
Yep. All that's just the state of our lovely world. Anyways, that's where we're going to end today's show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Some of you are only watching with one eye, like me. Or listening. Yay.
Hey, he's bringing back the half-plant heckler.
Pretty much. Fudge. This is annoying. Anyways, if you're watching on any of our video platforms, such as BitChute, YouTube, Rumble, and YouTube, then, of course, do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell us how we're doing. And, of course, send me some nice eye drops and maybe a pair of prescription lenses. That'd be great. If you're following us on our text platforms, such as Facebook, Getter, Twitter, and Parler, then send us a review, send us a comment, echo, and retweet our videos just to share it around, because the more reach we have, then the more people can be exposed to the truth.
That's right.
And then finally, of course, here at the Shrewd Dudes Podcast, we like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd?
Oh, by the way, one last shout out. If maybe comment in the comments below if you think that we should give Steve the name Salty Steve, the Scourge of the Seven Seas, or potentially Buckminster from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, like, you know, from Ice Age.
To shoot you all.
I think both those work. You know, Buckminster was like.
Anyways,
like
we shall return on Thursday for our normally scheduled live stream.
Yep.
We'll see how this video turned out. And then we shall inform you as to where we shall be multi-streaming, and we might include Rumble for the first time ever.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So we'll see how that goes. Have a great night, everybody, and as always, God bless.
Good night, everybody.